Good morning and welcome everyone, and thanks for making the time to come along to the Product Platform Rulebook launch this morning. Of course, an event we were due to hold in person last week, but sad events meant we've had to move it to this week. But it's a really important milestone for us and our program, and for the many partners that we've had with us. So, if we just run through the agenda for today first. So, Ruth, if you can push us on. I'm just going to shortly play a film that sort of tries to summarize what the rulebook is and why it is so important. Then I'm going to say a few words myself, and then we're going to hear from one of our key industrial partners in Ben Carlisle from Mott MacDonald, and then Vicky Brooks from the Department for Education, before we move on to a panel Q&A where I'll ask Ben, Vicky and Claire Fenton to join me to take any questions that have been raised by you throughout the morning. And then we'll conclude with a few words from Mark Reynolds, the co-chair of the Construction Leadership Council. So I think that's the event we're trying to run this through till about 11 o'clock, but really a big opportunity for you to ask questions, to get some feedback from you, and the documents and the rulebook are now all live on our website. Okay, so in terms of the platform construction and why in the Construction Innovation Hub we decided that we needed to produce a product platform rulebook, there's, as we're aware, been a close alignment between the ambitions of industry and indeed the government policy and ambition that they have set out themselves. And of course, this started in 2017 when government published Transforming Infrastructure Performance, and the autumn statement that year talked about a presumption in favour of off-site construction for a number of government departments, including Vicky's Department for Education. The IPA themselves then set out a consultation on platform-based design for manufacturing and assembly, and led to a collaboration with industry, which led to the construction playbook being published at the end of 2020. And of course, we saw last year IPA update tip with their roadmap to 2030. And through all of these documents, through all of the words of government, the ambition they've set out, they've been trying to steer a path to help industry to become more productive, more sustainable, to drive greater levels of modern methods of construction, to support platform approaches to deliver our schools, our hospitals, our homes of the future. So that led to us setting up within the Construction Innovation Hub itself our platform program, and really a number of strands that came out from that very early on was understanding that whilst there's quite a lot of off-site construction taking place, it doesn't always appear to be taking place in a coordinated and joined up way. There's lots of different systems, lots of incompatibility between different volumetric and platform approaches that people are taking, different ways that clients are setting out their requirements. And even with that desire from industry to drive more productive ways of delivery and that ambition from government to try and support modern methods of construction, to support platform approaches, there seemed to be a disconnect in the technical approaches being taken. That doesn't mean we have to standardize everything, but we can try and establish a set of principles and a set of rules which allows the market to grow and to flourish, to allow government to take advantage of the opportunities of platform construction, of modern methods, and allow industry to understand how they can address that market, how they can shape their businesses, shape their offerings, take advantage of what will be undoubtedly a growing market. So Ruth, if we think about what comes next in our program, if we're starting off with a position where we had an ambition from government and a desire from industry, we started off on a road that says, right, how do we set out a set of principles, a set of rules, make them openly available to industry and to clients alike, so they can start to think about how they deliver and how they enable modern production methods, industrialized construction, so we can start to see our schools and hospitals being produced much quicker, much safer, to a higher quality, better performing through their whole life, and support some of those wider ambitions to drive productive growth in the economy. So you'll see in the rule book that's published on our website the development framework we've set out in there around how we're managing the demand, develop, deploy, trying to think about it as a system rather than a series of bespoke approaches that are taken each project, where we create a series of prototypes, a series of first of a kinds. If we can define some demand side aggregation, if we can think about how we develop systems that can support multiple projects and multiple programs, and that's really been part of the thinking behind the rulebook. So if we then think forward to when we say a rule book, what do we actually mean by the rules themselves? So, rather than come up with something that says everything must be exactly the same, everything must be entirely standardized, that won't work. And we know that won't work. That's the strong feedback from government and clients who said they want the flexibility to have their products, their projects, their programs delivered in a more consistent way. And from industry who want to be able to develop their own bespoke solutions that can address that market. So we set about with a principle where we're trying to establish a set of rules which allow industry to collaborate on the rules but compete on the game. And we put out a beta version of the rulebook in May of this year with 7 rules, and took some consultation and led us to producing the version that's been published today, with a new rule on circularity added at the bottom. So within our rulebook, we have set out 8 principles to determine whether something can be considered as a product platform or not, and then looking at how we then, working within those rules, working within that government ambition, try to move on to the next step of deployment. The R&D program that the Construction Innovation Hub has been doing for the past 4 years has been about supporting and enabling transformation in the construction sector. We ourselves as the hub are not going to be market players. Our job is to try and enable the market to succeed. And we've done that, as I've said many times, through an approach that says, how can we work with our partners, with government, with our industrial collaborators, to try and develop tools, processes, solutions, rule books that enable the market to succeed. At the same time, we've been working with government, policymakers, regulators to try and create the right enabling framework so clients feel confident and able to ask for such solutions. And then, of course, thirdly, working with industry themselves to try and build that capability and capacity to be able to deliver these solutions when they're asked for. And within the rulebook itself, we've presented a number of case studies where this has been done for real, being done for real on live projects and programs, where we are starting to prove not only that it can be done, but by doing it, we are delivering better value, we're delivering higher quality, we're improving safety, we're improving performance, we're offering better services and better outcomes for the users of our infrastructure. And there's examples there from Bryden Woods Platform 2, from the seismic work, from Gen Zero with the Department for Education, the work that Mace have done, and of course the work that NG Bailey have done on services as well. So within the rulebook itself, to try and bring those rules to life, to try and bring those principles out, we focused on having a number of case studies which show how those rules have been deployed and how they support the ambition that we're setting out. So I think moving forward, Ruth, I think we're going to, the Hubs program itself, a 4-year program funded by UKRI as part of the Transforming Construction Challenge, formally comes to an end a week tomorrow. But of course, that's not the end of the rulebook, and it's not the end of the Construction Innovation Hub either. We have secured further funding throughout the rest of this year, where we are going to try and focus on developing the next stage in collaboration with government, in collaboration with industry, for the platform rulebook and other parts of our program, which support enabling platform solutions to be deployed at scale and pace, helping clients push those solutions into the market and helping the market to respond. We're looking about less further development on technical aspects of the rulebook, but more about deployability, more about the commercial imperative for doing so, more about the mechanisms for how it can be done in a way that supports those wider ambitions we have for jobs and growth. And the wider ambitions, we want to see a more sustainable industry, a more profitable industry, a more productive industry, and government in turn and clients in the private sector want to see their projects and programs delivered with certainty, to a high quality, safely, and delivering that value for money for their stakeholders, for the users of that infrastructure. So I think in terms of the next stage, what we'll do is move straight on from my words here. We'll skip past the film for now. Ruth will come back to that later. But I want to hand over to Ben Carlisle, who's been an absolutely key partner, one of our many industry collaborators who's been working with us over the last 4 years on the platform rulebook. And so Ben has been one of the principal authors of the rulebook. He's the global lead for DFMA in Mott MacDonald. And he's going to talk through a little bit about how it came together and what comes next. So Ben, if I can hand over to you, and then I'll come back after your words there. Ben, over to you.
Thank you, Keith. Great to be with you and everyone else today. So as Keith said, I'm going to talk you through a bit of a story about how all this came to happen and what needs to happen next in a story that I've tried to split up into these sort of six chapters, which started a few years ago. So it's a warm, slightly muggy summer's day 3 years ago. So Monday, 29th of July, 2019, to be precise. And I just returned from a pretty enjoyable family holiday in Corfu, catching up on the expected but still somehow surprising inbox and getting back up to speed with project work before heading across town to meet an old mate for dinner. Just as I was packing up, I got a call from a colleague, Toby Robinson, who was excitedly describing the hub's upcoming platform program. It was going to be the centerpiece of the work stream around manufacturing and accelerate the use of platform approaches to deliver our buildings. The platform approach, as Keith sort of alluded to, is quite a big shift in the way that we as an industry think about, approach and deliver our projects. And combined with an industry first program like this, it was pretty tough to ask. It was a pretty tough ask to secure the right backing for the time and effort needed to make the program a success. What if we gain nothing tangible for our day jobs? What if we remove the need for consulting engineers altogether? Was one of the questions I faced. How would liabilities and IP work in a program with this many partners? I guess the easy route at that time was not to bother. Maybe chalk it up as one of those things that our industry likes to start and never necessarily finish. But meeting the other people at workshops, seeing them join, seeing others maybe ignoring or walking away, allayed quite a lot of those concerns. And through some persistence, we secured the support that we needed, and we were in. So the environment was sort of at once familiar and strange, and definitely exciting. There were all the trappings of a normal project, the enthusiasm and expertise to get on and deliver, the project management, the program, organizational charts, that sort of thing. But then we were also without a client in the room. So there was no ITT, no works information to check back against. Lots of organizations coming together to collaborate at a fairly unfamiliar stage in a project lifecycle. The regular drumbeat of meetings, of working groups, of actions kicked in, and we seemed to be making progress. Everyone knew their stuff, willing to contribute to this industry-changing initiative. We were learning about manufacturing design tools, about quality planning and value-based decision-making, and we really felt, Toby and I, that this was full of opportunity and absolutely needed to be embraced. But just as this momentum was building, COVID-19 arrived in earnest. There was limited exercise, construction sites were frozen and then gradually got back, but with limits on people on site. And my personal favourite, homeschooling. This episode prompted calls from many of the industry partners for the programme to move faster and broaden its remit. And at this point, I was fortunate enough to start working more closely with Jamie Hillier and Trudy Sully, who were central to accelerating that progress. So the original aim was to start looking at one or more specific solutions in the form of a kit of parts, which could be used across government pipelines. This was originally set out in a hypothesis specification early in the programme, and through dedicated working groups and engagement with government departments such as the DFE, we developed and published Defining the Need in December 2020, which was a bit of a landmark report examining the future pipeline of residential and social infrastructure developments at a spatial, so at a room level, amongst other things. And I'd recommend looking it up if you haven't already. It highlighted the scale of opportunity and potential for the application of platform approaches. The construction playbook, launched at the end of 2020, helped affirm our findings and reinforce the pull and importance of a platform approach to the future of our industry. Using the Define the Need work, a team of Grimshaw, Bureau Happold and Band Design were developing designs for potential kit of parts and working with all the other supply chain partners based around different sub-assemblies. Configurators were being looked at, and specification maturity was being begun to be set out by Mace. But between Jamie, Trudy, myself, and increasingly a colleague, Paul Taylor, we had a sense that one solution for all might not be the right thing to go at. It might be too much to try and do. And increasingly, were we all sure that we meant the same thing when we used the same words? So work continued apace across all of those work streams, across design development, working groups, configurator, specification maturity, but this sort of nagging sensation grew. And I hope she won't mind me saying, but Trudy's patience was definitely tested with many a tortured analogy about everything from rugby to Renault, and many a marathon Teams call was held. And I think the clincher for me, at least, was when Paul Taylor had a sort of existential crisis when he began staring at the sandwich he was making himself one lunchtime and wondered whether it was in fact a platform for lunch. At this point, we realized we needed to build some sort of common framework or structure to hang it all on to allow a common approach, perhaps some sort of rule book rather than a one-stop solution, and concluded that we needed to get some more input on what that should look like. We took that out to consultation, reaching sort of 124 people across almost 100 organizations, both private sector and government, on really looking at the understanding of platforms, the potential role of a rulebook, the potential benefits, challenges, and so on. This consultation highlighted the need for a common language and approach above all else, something foundational really to sort of align language and translate the wisdom of other industries into the construction world and provide a frame for the discussion in the future. In mid 2021, Ron Lang, another of the co-authors, changed roles within the hub and was getting more interested in the rulebook. Around the same time as Transforming Instructional Performance, the roadmap to 2030 was published. This signposted the need for a rulebook and a potential platform mandate coming down the tracks from government. So we now had this sort of growing group of let's call them rulebook enthusiasts, drawn from a range of organisations, often finding ourselves in competition in the outside world, but working together to try and respond to the challenges found by the programme and by the consultation. At this point, it was all too tempting to keep it academic, maybe simply reference other industries or focus on the more familiar technical sort of traditional design engineering activities, or even just pick up one or two existing solutions and simply signpost those. But through dialogue and the programme strategy board, we concluded a rulebook was a key output from the programme in providing a foundation and basis to move forward. We published the Road to Rulebook in December 2021, which set out the aim of the Product Platform Rulebook that I'm going to talk about and introduced this development framework with the demand, develop, deploy stages, the creation of which was massively helped by teams such as Seismic and Bryden Wood and others, working with platforms already who kind of gave up their time to help us develop and validate that framework. After a brief break over Christmas, we returned in January of this year to begin a set of focus sprints over 4 months to produce a beta version of the rulebook. By this stage, our cast of Jamie, Ron, Trudy, Paul, myself had grown to include many others, so Johnny and Abby, James and Sue, to call them out, with many others in support. We agreed a set of aims and guiding principles, all derived from both the construction playbook and transforming infrastructure performance, to really seek to educate, empower, and enable a platform approach through our publication. So we worked on the basis that clients will work together to rationalise requirements while leaving solutions to the market. The 3 main areas we were wrestling with, which have really formed the basis for the content, are the why, so why platforms are useful, and how they add benefit to different organisations. So the what, different types of platform, the rules and principles that need to govern them, and the how, which is the development framework and supporting guidance, as well as looking at some of the industry change aspects. It's fair to say that we wrestled with a range of perspectives, both within the team and beyond. Definitely not straightforward, and certainly didn't always agree, but I think the solution is richer for all the diversity and challenge, and we believe this will help others go on this journey, as it is across the authors in our day jobs. This has been validated through live projects and then a second consultation in the middle of this year, which provided some really valuable, helpful feedback, distilled this into several themes, such as circularity, which went on to create a new rule, as Keith has highlighted, beginning to look at commercial considerations and better integration of other hub outputs, such as CPQP, Quality Value Toolkit, which we've addressed while trying to minimise additions to an already lengthy tome. And this, what's on the screen at the moment, is where we've ended up. These are the main six sections of the rulebook. I'm sure we would like to have been able to do more and take longer, and there may be some things missing and some things that could be better. But what we do know is that a common language is already helping. We're seeing it across both public and private sector projects that we're all involved with. And we also know that we need to adjust how supply and demand interact to improve the development of a more systematic and platform-based approach to leverage standardization and MMC at scale, while still providing the flexibility that we know we need for our built environment. So here we are, launching the first edition. This rulebook was developed by industry for industry, and we believe it underscores the commitment to this approach and its potential. Whilst it's just me, you've got the pleasure of listening to here this morning, there are many people who've played invaluable roles, too many to mention them all. I've called out several on the screen here, but we also know this launch isn't a farewell. We know that there's more to do, and we know it's not it. Certainly from our perspective, the worst outcome from here is that we stop at outputs, that this rulebook ends up sitting on a shelf, virtual or otherwise, and remains a purely academic exercise. That's why we're looking towards the future and the next phase of this work. So the next phase, as Keith alluded to, is about sort of practical things rather than technical things. So it's about deployment, about us, industry and clients stepping up, using this publication in increasing numbers of applications and developing it further from here together. So what are we doing? Well, as Keith alluded to, we've securing funding to focus on the practical rather than technical aspects. So we're going to be looking at understanding and articulating the changes needed to make adoption of platforms viable. So it's going to include an economic aspect as well as an organizational aspect. We're looking to further develop more detailed case studies, actively engage with and support departmental clients on implementation, including deployment manuals to support those key segments of the market, and then work with key stakeholders to define the legacy and governance strategy so that this can carry on and provide a sort of an open and sharing forum. But as I've mentioned a couple of times, this isn't a journey we can continue alone. There's a lot to be done to increase adoption, and I believe you all and your colleagues all have a role to play in that. So we need your help in shaping the legacy so it works for all of us here and the many thousands of people whose livelihoods depend on the performance of the construction sector. We want to document case studies in more detail and across broader applications so we can continue to learn from others who've already pioneered these approaches and share those lessons more broadly. And we'd love you to make use of all of this, really, to tell us what you think, to tell us what you learn so we can improve together. So thank you. We have all the bits we need, I think. The rulebook's out there. It's being used across public and private sector applications already, both in the UK and abroad. But we need your help to continue the metamorphosis for our industry, towards the adoption of platform approaches to deliver those better economic, social, and environmental outcomes for society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. I mean, that's really a whistle-stop tour through quite a lot of work and quite a lot of input from many people, many on this call today. And I'd like to sort of echo your thanks and just say, without their input, without their guidance, it would be very difficult for us to get to this position. And of course, one of the other aspects you touched on in your words was how important it is to not create something that just sits on a shelf, something that's technically excellent but entirely impractical. And of course, one of the things that we have been doing throughout our program across all of the aspects is making sure we're creating solutions not only that industry can deliver, but that clients want to buy. And we've been very lucky to work with a number of the government clients who really are forward thinking, who really do embrace the opportunity of platform approaches, who really are looking to drive better outcomes from their investment. And perhaps I'd like to now take the opportunity to introduce Vicky Brooks, who's the Deputy Director of Capital Commercial with the Department for Education, who's worked very closely with the Hub. And thank you again, Vicky, for all your input there to give a client's perspective on the rulebook and what it means to them. So Vicky, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Keith. Keith's obviously provided that overview about me and my role. So what do I actually do within the Department for Education? I lead the development and implementation of the commercial strategy for DfE Capital's delivery programmes. And I am absolutely delighted to be here today at this important milestone, the launch of the Product Platform Rulebook. I think it's really exciting. I know this has been a culmination of considerable collaborative efforts from both colleagues across government and our construction industry partners. So the Department for Education, we're responsible for children's services and education, including early years, schools, higher and further education policy, apprenticeships and wider skills in England. But at our heart, we are the department for realising potential. That powers our economy, strengthens society and increases fairness. Our school estate is enormous. It measures over 78 million square metres of floor space. It's across 64,000 buildings, serving nearly 9 million school children and over 400,000 staff. And it's estimated that 1 in 6 people visit an education setting every day. Maintaining the current estate, coupled with the increased demand for pupil places, has brought about a need for us to develop wider, more diverse and resilient approaches to construction project implementation. The DfE's Capital Directorate is one of the largest public sector construction clients in England. Our capital budget in the last year was over £5 billion, and we are absolutely committed to driving better infrastructure performance and whole life value from taxpayer funded investments. We are constantly looking to maximise value through our interventions in a way that will deliver greater social, environmental and economic outcomes from the social infrastructure investments that we deliver. Since the presumption in favour of offsite in 2017, the government has continued to support this ambition, enshrining platform adoption within policy documents such as the Construction Playbook, and the more recent publication of the IPA's Transforming Infrastructure Roadmap to 2030, all as Keith has explained. This outlines a vision towards leveraging the use of platforms to generate improved societal outcomes from its pipeline of projects and to create really stable, inclusive employment where jobs are most needed. The term platform is widely used in everyday conversation. A platform-based approach is long established within the manufacturing sector, and product manufacturers regularly share components and processes to create a range of distinct products on a reduced cost base. In a construction context, platform, meaning standards, repeatable assets with interoperable components, is a concept that's been widely embraced by the industry and our supply chain partners. And by applying those principles from manufacturing production, we're beginning to see increased efficiencies in the way our supply chain partners deliver the construction of schools. I really believe the Product Platform Rulebook supports this intent by offering a clear route for the adoption of platform approach to construction. The rulebook sets out a conceptual framework around people, products, processes, and brings clarity around when and how to best develop and deploy those platform solutions. With this approach, we can work together to establish commonality across our industry and create the right environment to stimulate market innovation and investment. The Department of Education has been on a parallel journey for the last 5 years, from standardisation, going back even as far as to 2013, to offsite production, to MMC, to DFMA, and now to platform DFMA. Our pipeline of schools projects includes a mixture of refurbishment and new build projects. Many of these new build projects have a high proportion of similar features, such as classrooms, practical spaces, admin suites, halls, kitchens, toilet cores, and so on. Everybody's familiar with what comes in a school. And because of this, there is a significant opportunity for harmonising our standards and rationalising our demand. In 2017, we released our first standardised component design manual. It was based on a standardised 3.6 metre grid and included fully compliant design solutions for all the most commonly occurring spatial adjacencies. These cluster-based solutions could be configured in virtually infinite permutations to suit almost any site or curriculum requirement. And we found that our supply chains responded positively to this rationalisation of our requirements. Instead of designing each project from scratch, they were able to focus their resources on more nuanced, value-added features such as a specific curriculum delivery or particular site or environmental requirements. During the years that followed, we have found that increased rationalisation of standards, the use of longer-term frameworks and better forward visibility of pipeline has enabled some of our supply chain to invest in recruitment, training, production facilities and R&D programmes to innovate their own compliant solutions, which could be redeployed over a portfolio of projects. In 2021, DfE completed our latest iteration of this rationalised approach, which is a platform solution known as Gen Zero and is featured as one of the case studies within the rulebook. Gen Zero is an R&D project funded by Innovate UK, working closely with the Construction Innovation Hub, the Manufacturing Technology Centre and the Centre for Digital Built Britain, together with externally appointed consultants. The aim of that R&D study was to develop a digital kit of parts that would be standardised, configurable, scalable and largely off-site manufactured. The completed school would also be net zero carbon in operation and significantly lower embodied carbon as an exemplar for a zero carbon future. Initial whole life carbon modelling confirmed that the Gen Zero platform already meets the RIBA's to 2030 target. And when the sequestered carbon within the timber is then factored in, this drops even further. A full-size version of the Gen Zero platform classroom was exhibited at COP26 in Glasgow, and next month we will see the completion of a larger prototype currently being constructed at the Manufacturing Technology Centre in Coventry. After so many years in the making, it's genuinely exciting to see these cross-government platform solutions being developed and constructed. And as these platform-based solutions start to be implemented within our school projects, we hope to see benefits in both produced and natural capital, including improved productivity, efficiency, predictability, on-site safety, quality, and reduced defects and rework. We'll also expect to see improved commissioning, reductions in waste, whole life carbon, and developments in innovation. We'd also, really expect to see a more diverse and resilient supply base, and crucially, improved inclusion and opportunities in new and disaggregated manufacturing industries. All these factors combine to improve the projects we deliver, resulting in better societal outcomes and improved value creation for the taxpayer. But such transformational changes are part of a long-term reform programme requiring change in process, skills and culture. This will require commitment, drive and exploration, guiding and supporting both suppliers and those working client side to cultivate the conditions that enable that transformational change. As a government department with a pipeline of future projects, we have a valuable opportunity to leverage our purchasing power to support modernisation and to reform aspects of the construction industry. Not just that, but some might say an obligation to facilitate and nurture and showcase exemplary innovation that will help the industry to become more productive, more resilient and more sustainable. So what about our next steps in the journey towards platform and DFMA? To date, we've obviously developed the conceptual Gen Zero platform solution, built various trial prototypes to test and explore aspects of the solution, and we'll now begin to consider how we'll move from that concept to delivery and implementation of a developed version of the Gen Zero platform across live school projects. Obviously, this presents a whole new set of challenges. Innovating any idea from concept to working product can be a long and challenging process and fraught with complexity and risk. We believe that success in accelerating our platform solutions will depend on targeted collaborative working with the selected supply chain partners via long-term contract arrangements. We want to develop leaner, streamlined and scalable procurement processes that support R&D investment, innovation, skills development and value-based decision making. I am very confident that the Product Platform Rulebook will be instrumental to enabling this change by accelerating the awareness and understanding of product platforms whilst facilitating a common process of development that is absolutely consistent across industry. And I just want to close by offering my congratulations and thanks to the Construction Innovation Hub and all its partners in the launch of the Product Platform Rulebook. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vicky. That's really great to hear. And of course, you talked about some of those broader benefits that a platform approach can deliver beyond just the capital phase of the project. Some of those better, broader environmental, economic and social outcomes that can be supported. And of course, that is very much our focus for the next iteration of the rulebook. We're moving out of, if you like, an R&D phase of our program into a deployment and diffusion. How do we support clients to adopt these technologies? How do we help industry build the capability and capacity? And that's very much our focus moving forward. And of course, you talked about the enormous capital program that the Department for Education have. And I think government spends somewhere around £15 billion every year on buildings alone. not on linear infrastructure, just on buildings, around £15 billion every year. And if we can try and aggregate some of that demand, if we can try and drive that transformational change in how platform approaches can support those better outcomes you talked about, that'll be a real step forward for our industry. And of course, when we come on to the next steps, it isn't something that the hub is going to do in splendid isolation. We will continue to need to work with clients such as yourself and with our broad industry partners to drive that change through. So thank you very much for your words, Becky. So why have we produced the Product Platform Rulebook?
The rulebook was definitely needed because something was needed to sort the problems out in our industry.
We've written the rulebook to answer 3 key questions, so the why, the what and the how.
What the industry needed was a really simple way of understanding what a rulebook would do, what product platforms are and how we can potentially implement them going forward.
If you look at government's policy ambitions, they've set out a desire in the construction playbook and in the TIP roadmap to 2030 to drive greater levels of modern methods of construction, to be more productive, to deliver better performing buildings from the investment we make each year.
If we're going to be able to build 40 new hospitals by 2030, we're going to have to lean on a platform system to develop that standardisation across those hospitals.
Through the rulebook, we've examined and translated these principles, taking a first step towards mainstreaming use of product platforms in construction.
We've got a great deal of government policy and support for it, and a wide range of industry players who are starting to adopt that practice and deploy it in the real world.
The purpose of the rulebook is to educate, enable and empower organisations to develop and deploy product platforms as part of a broader vision that seeks to transform the construction industry to deliver better economic, social and environmental outcomes.
So the Product Platform Rulebook is an open access guide to support all of industry, clients, contractors, consultants, manufacturers who want to produce better manufactured product solutions to deliver the schools, hospitals, homes of the future.
Really gives them a signpost and a tool to actually start to navigate the complexity of how you design and construct buildings in the future.
For me, the rulebook, whilst it works in splendid isolation, it also brings together lots of the other elements of the Construction Innovation Hub, the information management and value. And I personally think digital is a key part of it as well.
It's also applicable to the private sector, and actually it's something we're already seeing international interest as well, so it can be used in almost any part of the built environment.
I think the big thing for me is the collaboration of the people with the know-how, but also the people who deliver these buildings. And they're the ones that are faced with the challenges, and they're the ones that really know what they need to move forward and to see change.
Collaboration has been really important. Working with the industry partners, I think it's really shown that when we come together, the solutions we produce are so much more rounded and better quality.
It's been great to see such enthusiasm with our industrial partners when we're looking at platform approaches to construction.
So this really does feel to me like a rulebook that's written by industry for industry. The value is its opportunities. It's a really good guide and it's in plain English, straightforward. I think any company will resonate to the value that it offers, which means that it can be used. It's not just something that is aspirational.
For me, the Product Platform Rulebook is seminal. It's key to make industry change and help us move to advanced manufacture.
The platform rulebook will ensure that we're not stifling innovation.
The rulebook brings value to government clients in quite a direct way. So that guidance that tells government clients how they can aggregate their pipeline, what they need to do on their specifications and standards. And it gives them the tools to do that and to deliver differently. So there's a really direct benefit.
So we're looking to see the rulebook used more widely across the built environment, delivering highly productive, sustainable, high quality and safe public buildings.
So the rulebook can't gather dust on a shelf, be that virtual or real. It's very much a live document. It needs to be maintained, it needs to be updated. So it's about the continuous improvement.
So the rulebook is definitely a starting point, and it's really exciting to see what the future holds for it. But it's the stepping stone in how we can develop modern methods of construction for platform delivery.
So at Mont MacDonald, we're going to use the rulebook on our projects within health and education to develop the next generation of hospitals and schools.
At Atkins, we're leading from the front in the space of product platforms. We're already implementing the concepts of the rulebook across a number of public and private projects and programmes. But we're also looking inwardly to understand how our business models and our ways of working may need to change to accommodate this.
At Akerlof, we have applied the demand, develop and deploy framework that's embedded within the rulebook to successfully deliver benefits through a platform-based approach.
And this isn't going to be a quick win, it's not going to be an easy fix, but we have the tools.
Read it from cover to cover, understand it, because this is going to be a real game changer for you. It's going to help you meet a lot of your key objectives.
Thank you, Ruth, for that. So again, that film, very powerful film, because we heard from Ben and Vicky earlier in terms of the words around the importance of collaboration, and hopefully that film demonstrates how we wouldn't have got to where we are now without that collaboration from government, without that enthusiasm and engagement from industry. But we're now got a chance for a panel Q&A, and I'd like to obviously welcome back Vicky and Ben, but also introduce Claire Fenton, who's a director at Fenton Partners, a specialist cladding contractor who has again been a key part of the team working on the development of the rulebook. So welcome everyone. Ruth, before we run into any questions from the floor, can I just ask one of my own, if that's all right, of my fellow panelists? And it's around that theme of collaboration. One of the challenges when we were talking in the early stages of our programme was recognising that whilst government clients and whilst industry all wanted to move forward and be more productive, be more sustainable, one of the challenges that was being faced through the competitive nature and the disaggregation on both the demand and the supply side was everyone was sort of pursuing their own path. And of course, one of the advantages of the work that government's done with the construction playbook and the TIP roadmap and funding of the Transforming Construction Challenge and the Hubs program itself is that ability to bring collaboration within industry and within government clients, and then between those two demand and supply side areas. So perhaps if I could start off with Vicky, you talked a lot in your words about collaboration. Do you feel that the collaboration that you have and successfully put in place with your supply chain partners is equally valuable when you start thinking about your fellow government clients like the Department for Health and Ministry of Justice as well, that cross demand side collaboration to try and support that joined up approach, Vicky?
Thanks, Keith. Absolutely, and I think across government we are collaborating more than ever. I think certainly from my perspective, we are now really joined up in our approaches. We have really strong links across health, across justice, and I think that will help us as we move towards those platforms and looking across our demand, across our platform approaches to make sure that we are aligned. So I think it is something that we are. I think it's growing all the time. I think even from where we were maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I think it is substantially different. The construction playbook has been quite critical as part of that, but the TIP programme. So there is a lot of activity across government in terms of that collaboration.
That's brilliant. So perhaps thank you, Vicky, and perhaps I'll come to Claire. And perhaps Claire, you might want to just introduce yourself to the wider audience, and then think about the collaboration aspects from your perspective as a specialist who has a key role to play in the future of platform construction. Claire.
Yes, I'm Claire Fenton. I've been involved with the platform since day one as an industry partner, and then was brought onto the strategy board as it progressed. I'm also chair of the MCRMA, which is a group of manufacturers. I'm an innovator myself, so I've innovated products around construction. And the big thing for me about collaboration is I see it in lots of different forms. I sit integral to delivery of buildings. So I collaborate with architects, engineers, but also cladding contractors, the boots on the ground people. And it's joining them all together, but taking it to the platform as an industry partner. The evolution of us as a group of manufacturers sitting on this platform, it was a real struggle at first to get people to talk and change and change their attitudes. But as we developed, what we were learning from each other was we were developing our own platform solutions within the platform and new products to support it. So we're already seeing that evolution, because over the last 3 years, we have had industry collaborate, and we've broken down those barriers, those competitive barriers. When I look at the MCRMA and the manufacturers there, and I'm trying to bring in an R&D arm to that element, again, I'm seeing that barrier to collaboration. But I think that the only good thing out of the whole programme is that we're developing and we're learning that collaboration is the only way forward.
Excellent. Wise words indeed, Claire. Thank you. And Ben, from your perspective, you mentioned in your words, of course, the early days of the platform program, where we had people who traditionally competed coming together to try and collaborate on a set of rules. And I think that we're not trying to take out any competition in the market. What we're trying to do is, I think you said it yourself, collaborate on the rules and compete on the game. So how have you managed to sort of cross that competitive tension in terms of developing something that supports the whole industry as well as your business by itself?
So I think having a common language is a really key thing, and I think if we could all express ourselves in the same way and understand each other in the same way, that's been hugely valuable. And I think a large part of the journey, I suppose, I tried to describe this morning, was getting to that point. I think I suppose at a practical level, the demand, develop, deploy framework that we've produced has helped to frame some of those discussions. So if we're talking about demand, it's quite easy to take competition out of that because it's a future pipeline. It's not going anywhere in particular, but we know it's coming. So Vicky, you talked about the scale of your estates. We know that there is a sort of continual number of interventions we have to make into the education estate, for example. It's the same with the new hospital programme, the same with prisons. So actually, it provides a boxed area to talk about it quite safely. And then likewise with develop, because that's taking place outside any one project environment, it sort of removes that competitive edge. But then the competition takes place within deploy, right? So how well can you take these ideas? How well can you take the processes and tools and go and apply them within a particular project setting? But one of the big bits of value is, I think, bringing people's perspectives across different parts of those pipelines, experience with different bits of the supply chain, with different departments within government, being able to aggregate that and harmonise the language that we use. Just for me, is hugely beneficial because we're solving very similar problems, albeit in slightly different domains with different nuances to it.
Thanks, Ben. And I think Ruth's put a note in the chat to encourage people to come forward with any questions. So ahead of that, I also want one more question for you, Ben, if I may, and then to Claire as well, and then perhaps Vicky can comment on the answers. But we've often seen in traditional construction the relationship between clients and tier one contractors and their consultants as being the primary relationship that's taken place. But of course, when we're moving into the processes of platform construction, we're perhaps able to engage with different parts of the supply chain, specialist providers like Claire's business, for example, much earlier in the process. And perhaps start with Claire. Do you see the benefits of early collaboration for different parts or non-traditional parts of the supply chain as being a sort of key benefit and an essential driver of the change we're seeking?
Without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, I had the pleasure of visiting one of the case studies of the Forge, and that's played out where they took industry specialists, brought them on board to solve a problem, so that it wasn't just, again, a hypothetical or a modelled version, it was a delivered model. And in such, they brought value to the project. It made it a slicker, easier, quicker, less space evasive solution. So it's already being played out. Years ago, we did collaborate on that way. We would be involved right from day one, regular meetings, and then there was a change. I think it was around the mid 2000s, 2008ish, and that collaboration was lost. So to re-engage, I think it's the only way, and it will. When it will deal with the challenges that are experienced on site day to day that aren't sort of accounted for early on.
sort of initial sort of concepting phases.
Thanks, Claire. And from Ben, from your perspective, does this sort of platform approach change not who you engage with, but when you engage them and the basis under which they're able to, if like, help develop your solutions rather than just deliver them? Do you see the difference there being enabled through the rulebook?
Yes, I think we do. And I think it comes down to, you talked about it right at the beginning, I think, Keith, about having a more kind of systematic or systemized approach. So you're not, if you don't start with a blank sheet of paper every time, you're not leaving the resolution of detail until the last minute and expecting it to be fixed on site or, you know, at the last minute. You're making those decisions earlier, and therefore you can have a better, more productive, more sort of beneficial discussion much earlier, because you understand the contribution that everybody's playing, how they all plug together. And so you can, you know, we're seeing the ability to engage with more key, I suppose, more influential suppliers earlier, bring the wisdom that is everywhere within the supply chain up much earlier, and then avoid the problems that we traditionally see by leaving detail to the last minute to resolve.
That's good. Yeah, and Vicky, from your perspective, do you think the Department for Education is going to be engaging with a broader range of specialists in terms of developing their commercial approaches and their delivery strategies moving forward? So you're on mute, Vicky.
Thank you. I think it is certainly something that we have to harness the value, the opportunity of the supply chain into our approach. You know, I think it is, from a client perspective, it is untapped. You know, and we can certainly, if we get to those sort of more regularized, more standardized approaches, we can start to bring that value into our arrangements. And so I think it is certainly something, you know, we're really keen to investigate, to how we can see how we can get that value, that opportunity, and realize it, and really start to improve the way we deliver, help also support the supply chain to be a better environment for them to exist in as well.
Excellent. Okay, I see we've got some questions in the chat now. Ruth, can I hand over to you to pose them for us, please?
Absolutely, and thank you to Lauren for kicking us off. So Lauren Webster asks, in the video it was noted that this will be a live document. How will companies be informed of the latest updates? Ben, do you want to take that one and talk about what we're going to do next?
So a big part of the next sort of 6 months or so is about defining what the legacy looks like. So we've set out some principles that we think that legacy needs to adhere to in the back of the rulebook, which appeared as a sort of a Venn diagram in a couple of places. And really that's based around having some ownership of it, and a forum where we can bring together sort of experience and learning, and then feed into progress, improvement, and so on. So I don't have a direct answer other than saying the next 6 months is about defining the strategy for that legacy, what that vehicle looks like, what the forum looks like, and then starting to implement that.
Yeah, I think perhaps in terms of live, what we mean is perhaps regularly refreshed rather than changing on a day-by-day basis on that. So we will certainly, as various refreshers and iterations come through, we will put out the appropriate publicity, and obviously, you know, through our various networks, promote those so people are aware of the latest developments and those things that Ben has alluded to. Thank you.
Thank you. Jackie Glass has a question. Jackie, would you like to put your camera on and ask your question to the panel?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you very much, Ruth. Thank you, everybody. Good morning, Jackie Glass from UCL. I'm really pleased to see the launch today. Congratulations, everybody, on a brilliant piece of work. I think it's a really important enabler for the industry, what you've produced. So I'm really looking forward to see how that's taken up. And a question, I think perhaps Ben may build on what you were just previously saying about legacy, because I was thinking ahead to what you were talking about in terms of evaluating implemented platform projects, and seeing how they work, seeing how they land, seeing what we can learn from them. But of course, that's something that we need to plan for, and it could be a few years in the making, of course. So I was just wondering if you had any thoughts about forward evaluation and sharing of best practice as we see projects come to life.
I'll pick that one up.
Okay. Thanks, Ben.
I think so. You're right, Jackie. I think that the cycle time on some of these is generally quite long. I think it's something that we do need to think about, and part of the case study activity over the next sort of 6 months is getting into more detail with the sort of half a dozen detailed case studies that we have been working with. So that, you know, the Maces, the Forge that Claire's talked about, Gen Zero that Vicky's talked about, and Seismic as examples. We need to carry on engaging with those teams and those groups, and learning from them and from others. So we know that there are other people doing it in the industry, and I think the more examples we can get, and the more defined we can make the measurement and evaluation, the better. But I think it's probably a case of getting started, and then we can improve that process over time.
Brilliant. Do you have something to add, Keith?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think there's obviously a lot of work that government is doing in terms of trying to benchmark the performance, and perhaps understand, Jackie, where certain interventions are driving better outcomes, certain approaches are supporting some of those better solutions, be they around net zero or social value. So I think we'll want to work very closely with the IPA and central government and their benchmarking teams in that space. And certainly what we want to do is, through the case studies that we've produced and that we will develop moving forward, is try and bring that stronger evidence base, not only of the benefits that platform approaches have delivered to individual projects and programs, to if you like, close out on an end of project evaluation, but more to inform future interventions and future policy and how we drive those things forward. I think it's really important that we build that strong evidence base, because many of the people who have been our collaborators and our partners on this program believe it. I would be probably rash if I believed that everyone in the Treasury was an entire enthusiast and evangelist at this current moment in time. So part of our job as clients, as industry, is to try and provide that strong evidence that this is the best way to demonstrate how it supports not just better projects and better value from them, but those better outcomes that Vicky mentioned as well. We can create the evidence. But Jackie, you're absolutely right. And perhaps we have a side conversation, you and I, about how we take forward that evaluation to try and make sure we are demonstrating the benefits to not just ourselves, but those people who are making those decisions moving forward. Thanks for the question.
Right, I'll move on to a question from Richard Crosby, which is timely as we've just talked about Seismic. So Richard asks, how do we encourage cross-industry use of existing platforms and stop every client, contractor and supplier developing their own? Claire, would you like to take that one first?
Well, that's a real difficult one, because I'm experiencing companies that are doing that. But the problem is there was no standard guide, so everybody were left to their own devices. I think from an industry perspective, we do want these guides, we do want these sets of rules so that we've got things to refer to. Because at the moment we are all pretty much left to our own devices. We have to disseminate a whole rack of standards and requirements, and everybody is interpreting them in their own way. What the rule book I've always seen is a starting point to give that reference document. I was only at a meeting yesterday with a group of insurers who cannot apply risk to our industry because there's too many people doing too many things in different ways. So we can't expect to resolve that problem straight away. But if we can start putting in architecture and infrastructure to enable that, then and enable a commonality, then maybe we can start this mood of change.
Yeah, I think if I can just pick up, Richard, I mean, that's a very good point. And I think it's worth reflecting that we're talking about a market of platform construction that's going to grow significantly over the coming years. And certainly there isn't one solution that will service every single school or hospital or home moving forward. What we'd like to see is those various platform solutions that come forward to be consistent with the rules and moving forward. What I don't want to have, and what I will actively lobby against, is a whole series of different rule books and different specifications. What we want to try and do is create a common set of rules that all of industry works to, and allow those best solutions to come forward consistent with those rules, where they're able to demonstrate they support the outcomes that the clients from the public and private sector are wanting. So there is an ambition to try and draw this together. There is an ambition from government clients to work with the rulebook moving forward. There is an ambition from the Construction Leadership Council and other parts of industry to get behind the rulebook. Therefore, what we don't want is a whole series of disparate systems from both the demand or the supply side that are making it harder for companies to invest and develop those products, those solutions, those approaches that really deliver that greater value. So we can't at the moment mandate that people don't do it. What we're going to try and do is encourage, sometimes through the use of force, people to try and come down a route that actually joins up and makes the best of the opportunity that this approach will give. Thanks for the question, Richard.
Thanks, Richard. We have a question from Sean. If you'd like to put your camera on, would you like to ask that question? It's about the scope of investment on the client side.
Okay, thanks, Ruth. So my question, from my opinion about how to make this product platform work in the construction depends on, one is the client side, the investment. So how sustainable this investment would be. So put it simple, product platform lead some contractors and suppliers lead some confidence that this is not a fancy word that only sustain like 5 years and it disappears. On the other side is the proactive change on the supply side, contractors, designers, to integrate this product platform into their business to make it work. Because we all know in construction, many organizations are quite reactive to the market trends. The consequence is that they can grab some changes here and there, sporadic, onto their business, but not really integrate those technologies, those changes into their businesses to really make it work in a sustainable way. And that makes, I think, any new technology hard to work in the construction industry. So I guess my first question is to Vicky. So how is the scope? What is the scope of investment? How sustainable is that to motivate the supply side? And another question is to Claire and Ben. So what are the major organizational changes needed from the supply side to make this product platform work? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go to Vicky first.
Thanks, Sean. So I think when it comes to investment, the key, I think we all want to see is that pipeline, that stable pipeline of the future, which enables, which provides sort of confidence, supports investment on the supply side, but also, thinking about creating the right environments, the right collaborative environments, the right contracting arrangements that help support that investment. It is always the challenge that we face. We need to do the innovation, we need to do the investment, but how do we actually create the right environments for that? And I think really it is about creating that pipeline, so that people can see the forward projection, the long-term demand, which coupled with the right contracting arrangements, the right potentially alliancing arrangements, it really helps to harness that innovation, that investment. It's actually a crucial aspect of it that we're always considering, and also and making sure we've got the right approach.
Right, thanks, Vicky. Ben, would one of you like to go next?
Right. I didn't quite get the chat, but jumping onto the second part of that question, major organisational changes that we need to look at. I think there's so many benefits, but there's going to be so many challenges. One of the biggest challenges is going to be sites for manufacture. We're talking about off-site. Where are we going to have the space to build these platforms? Because transport is a key, and the big major centres for like Amazon are taking up these main infrastructure positions. We need to look at how companies can build organisations where they could do the off-site manufacture. That's one of the big challenges. But another major challenge is the financial. There's a model about products and how they land, and they go to site, and companies are paid when materials are paid, arrive on site. When we look at an off-site model, how do we change to integrate payment structures? So with every benefit, so the repeatability, the shoring up of pipelines, of skills, etc., on the flip, there's always going to be these challenges. And I think that's, as we've alluded to early on, is the next stage that we look at is how we can actually deploy these systems in the real world. That's where the challenge is, and I think that's the next challenge for the platform.
Yeah, so I would agree, I think, with everything that Vicky and Claire have said. From, I suppose, my perspective as a consultant, what we traditionally get rewarded for is finding the 1 or 2 or 20% that's different between every project. And I think this platform approach needs to flip that on its head and start focusing on the sort of 80-90% of all of the projects that we do that are similar enough to be able to leverage this sort of platform approach. So a sort of shift in, I suppose, mindset and reward and incentive around finding what's common rather than what's different. I think moving more towards sort of configuring. So we need to find a better way to engage earlier stage design with products and systems that are available within the market, so that we can sort of draw from that palette of solutions rather than developing it sort of bespoke every time. And then I think something that Claire just alluded to is the sort of payment terms, but I think the approach to packaging that we tend to take, particularly on large projects, doesn't always fit with business models. So we know there's some change that needs to happen, particularly in the sort of tier 1 market that's going to be the focus of some of the next 6 months activities, to really articulate what those changes look like and how that works with existing business models and what they might need to do to change. So probably lots of small changes and a few big ones is probably the answer.
Perfect, thank you. We've got 3 remaining questions in the chat, which we can cover in the time that we've got. So if I could ask Ron Lang, if you'd like to ask your question, and I'd just ask the panel to keep the answers quite tight so we can get through all 3 remaining questions. That'd be great. Ron, over to you.
Thanks, Ruth. I won't come on camera because I'm struggling for bandwidth for some reason. Question for Ben, accepting it's as much a question for me perhaps as it is for Ben. One of the things we talk about a lot are skills at the sort of manufacturing supply deployment end. As we went through this process of writing the rulebook, I think it was very obvious that front end strategic planning section and understanding what platforms are and how you use them to benefit your organization was a bit of a challenge for the types of people that we needed to speak to and to employ. So I just wonder if you had any initial thoughts around the types of skills that organizations like ours, from a design consultancy end, need to start to look at, and what was perhaps different to the norm?
That's a good question. I think, well, simplistically, I think a better grasp of sort of how to gather, synthesize and analyze and visualize and understand and interrogate data sets across a range of places. So rather than being focused on sort of one project or one area, being able to aggregate things more broadly is definitely something that we see a need for. I think the sort of the value toolkit side of the hub's activities is also part of that. I think being clear about what you're trying to drive and then embedding that almost kind of benefits management, benefits realization culture all the way through, so you end up with the right answer, is another aspect that we're seeing. Otherwise, I think a lot of the technical ability is there. It's just getting more of a strategic, more of a pause up front with the kind of strategic approach would be what I would say. But I think we're still discovering and learning what changes and what developments we need to have in which areas. But maybe we need to compare notes again.
Thanks, Ben. Ruth, can I very quickly also just pick up on something Keith spoke about earlier?
Very quickly.
I don't know where that sound's coming from. So Keith, just to answer Richard's question, there's just an angle that I wanted to add into that. So yes, of course, we don't want a proliferation of platforms in the future. But what we always accepted in writing the rulebook was that there would be we used to call it sort of divergence before convergence, and you need that competition to drive innovation and improvement in platforms. If we just take stock of the platforms we have now and get everybody to use them, we're not seeing the full benefit of what platforms can do. That's not to discredit anything that already exists. There are some fantastic platforms out there, but we know there needs to be competition, and in the future they will start to rise to the top, I think. So just to add that as a side note from strong arming everyone into existing things. Not that you're suggesting that, of course.
I was thinking of strong arming people into existing rules rather than existing things, Ron.
Yeah,
so I totally agree with your point. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ron. So I'm just going to take Steve Nesbitt's question and put that to you, Keith. So do we see a case for enticing established manufacturing organisations from other sectors to port over to construction? And is this necessary, at least in the near term?
Yes. Can I just, and I'll explain why. About 100% of construction is delivered at the moment by construction companies. I think as we move into platform and we look at how buildings of the future will be designed, built, manufactured, operated moving forward, I think the construction industry will not be doing 100% of the construction. I think we will see manufacturing companies coming in with their products, taking a much more of a significant role in the delivery of portfolios and investments moving forward. I see technology companies coming into the space as well. So I don't think traditional construction companies will be doing 100% of construction as we move into this space. So there's a real opportunity for businesses to develop their offering, to take advantage of the opportunities from businesses that currently sit within the construction sector and those that sit outside the construction sector. I think change is coming, and the people who are able to adapt and adopt those approaches and those processes will be the ones that will succeed in this moving forward. So I think some of the players will change. So the answer to Steve's question is yes, and not just for the short term.
Brilliant. And then we have a final two questions from Kel Jones. The first, the use of platforms changes the points of procurement of buildings. And slightly controversially, are the Treasury on board, if any of the panelists would like to take that one?
What I would say is platforms is integral within the construction playbook. It's integral within the transforming infrastructure program. And if you look at construction, there is a massive productivity challenge, and platforms are the key to addressing that productivity challenge. And I think it's not as government clients, we've got to build really good buildings for very good reasons, but we've also got to build them really well. So when I say that's how we build them, how are we also leveraging other value, like I talked about earlier, that sort of wider economic, societal value, and platforms are absolutely key to doing that. And platforms are written throughout the construction playbook, throughout TIP. It's absolutely underpins that approach completely.
Brilliant, thank you. And then it's always good to end on a light note. So Kel's second question, and I think Paul Taylor could probably answer this as he's joining us on the call. What was the outcome of the question? Is a sandwich a platform? Paul, would you?
A sandwich is a platform. It's what I've uncovered. yeah. By saying that, the actual fundamentals that what we discover about platforms is, you have common components and variable components. The common components being the bread, the variable component being the filling. So a sandwich is a platform.
I think that is a perfect note to close our Q&A. Thank you to all our panelists. We are now going to test my sound abilities one final time, but I've had a practice now, and hear from Mark Reynolds, the co-chair of the Construction Leadership Council. So if I could ask everyone to turn their cameras off, and hopefully we will seamlessly go to Mark.
Thank you all for joining us, and my sincere apologies I couldn't be with you in person today. Unfortunately, recent events have made it impossible, but I'm very pleased to get a chance to share my thoughts, even if they're pre-recorded. Like many of you, I'm delighted to see the publication of the rulebook and the opportunity to be part of the collaboration across the industry that has got us to this point. The launch of the Construction Playbook was a landmark moment for our sector, and my hope is this publication will have the similar impact. by setting a clear roadmap forward for the future of platform-based construction. It is more important than ever that our sector modernises and industrialises as we look towards a new era of delivery. The faster we can adopt these methodologies and drive change, the more ably we can address the challenges we face, from working towards net zero to increasing productivity and sustainability within our sector. That's why this new playbook represents another major step forward in the work to transform our sector and ensure we're equipped to answer the increasingly complex challenges we face. It provides us with a vital route map as we deploy and embed a platform-based approach for construction, ensuring clarity and focus to achieve real results, not just for everyone who contributes to the built environment, but society as a whole. The transformation outlined in this book will improve how our industry operates, not just for the organisation and businesses, but for the fantastic people who work within it. Our industry is like no other, where we can all affect such significant change on how we live and work. The next generation of construction experts coming through our training programs will enter an industry that looks very different from the one I joined 4 decades ago. A safer, greener, more productive construction industry. And that's why what happens next is so crucial. This is our route map, but unless we work together to take everyone on the journey, it won't succeed. With that in mind, I'm very pleased that the Hub has funding and a plan to secure legacy for the rulebook to help embed and support us drive a true platform approach to construction. I hope you've all enjoyed today's event and leave here knowing that the rulebook can support you and your organisation's activities. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing its journey during our exciting future.
All right, thank you, Ruth, and thanks to Mark for that message. I know Mark was due to attend the live launch when it was scheduled for last week, but it's great that he's managed to put those words through to support today. I think, Ruth, we've got a minute or two, so if you allow me just to close here, I think, again, just to reiterate, the documents themselves are now live on our website, as indeed there'll be a recording of this will be available equally for those who have been unable to make it for the whole session. I'd like to firstly thank Ruth and the team, and of course my fellow panelists in terms of Ben and Vicky and Claire for their input today. Thank you all for coming, and thank you for your questions and the debate we've had over the last half hour or so. I really want to also put a special thanks to all those many industry and government partners who've worked with us over the last 4 years to help develop the rulebook and get it to this stage where we're publishing the first full edition today. But to me, even though this is a milestone that we've published the first edition, this is not job done. This is job started. And so really, as we move forward beyond the publication and into the next stage of the rulebook and the next iteration of how we drive platform construction moving forward, I look forward to being able to continue to work with you all as we keep the rulebook live, as we keep that iteration going, as we try and drive greater levels of platform construction and modern methods into our future schools, our future hospitals, our future homes moving forward. The investment we make each year in the built environment, as we've said a number of times this morning, is crucial to deliver better social, economic and environmental outcomes, and platforms will play a key role in that. So again, thank you to everyone who's contributed. Thank you to everyone who's been here today. And I look forward to sharing with you the next steps as we go forward and we see deployment and diffusion of platform solutions at scale and at pace here in the UK. Thank you very much.